Okay, guys, welcome back to the Bennett Brothers podcast. Today is the Jacob Bennett podcast. It's never been the Bennett Brothers podcast recently. It's always been. You know who's been the most consistent? Who's always been here for you guys? Me. Titus is gone. Don't know where he's at. He'll show up somewhere halfway through this, I'm pretty sure. But Matt is still not here. He's still gay. But I've got some questions from you guys that I've accumulated and wanted to answer real quick because I don't really have anything else to talk about because I can't have a conversation with anyone because they all suck. All right, first question is, how do you deal with small... I'm just going to read these off in my own way. I read the question, but how do you deal with small screw-ups and failures along the way while you're headed somewhere bigger is what I think this question meant. And actually, I have a very distinct memory of one big screw up that I made while my brother and I were running our first business, and we didn't really have that much money at the time because of the fact that we were investing it all into our first business. I used to get fuel out of this tank that my dad had. He would sell us the fuel. Oh, look who showed up.
Whatever, dude.
Wow. 2 hours later. Don't worry, guys. Titus cares about you. But anyways, he would sell us fuel for 30 cents cheaper than they did at the pump, so we just bought it from him. But his pump didn't have it. It was frozen one day and didn't click off when my pickup was done filling up, and I ran into our shop to go do some work while I was waiting on it to fill up. I figured, whatever, it'll just click, and it didn't. For 45 minutes, it just sat there dumping fuel. This is a huge fuel tank, and I spilt thousands of dollars in fuel, and the way we cleaned it up was we actually just lit all the fuel on fire, and we caught part of the shop on fire. It was pretty bad. But long story short, I ended up having to pay my dad thousands of dollars that at the time was some of the only money that I had. I had $5,000-$10,000, and that's not much when you're trying to run a business. So that kind of crushed me a little bit. And I remember the day before I had read a book that was talking about how champions deal with failures. And it was saying basically, if you can't look at every failure as a learning experience and figure out a way to make it a learning experience rather than a failure, then you're never going to win because you're just going to dwell on that. And when you try to make it a learning experience, you scoop every little bit of learning that is possible out of the situation that's at hand. So, I spilt all the fuel. I had to pay him and whatnot. I remember walking out of his shop, and I was just I was ready to be mad about the fact that I did that. But I just stopped, and I remembered the book that I read, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna live up to that. That is my new thing. I'm always gonna try and figure out a way to make everything a learning experience, and not in some gay weird way like most people would. Oh, who cares if I suck at life? It's a learning experience. I'm talking about actually analyzing your screw ups and fixing them, not being a nerd. So I didn't get mad about it. The whole drive home, I thought about every piece of information that I could take from that and better my life. So what I came up with is focus on whatever it is that you're doing. Don't run off and go work in the shop while you're fueling up your pickup. Do what you're doing. Be focused, and don't be forgetful. Don't forget about the fact that you were fueling up your pickup, and don't trust fuel pumps, I guess, but it's really easy when you try to actually just scoop every little bit of learning possible out of every situation rather than just making it a big deal. Sure, I lost a bunch of money, but in reality, I just paid $3,000-ish for a really good life lesson that taught me a lot. So that wasn't a loss. I just bought a really good life lesson.
It's always bad to think negative, because if you're always thinking negative, then you're never going to think about anything good. You're always just going to think I'm going to go down to the grocery store, but then you're like, but traffic. I'm not going to go down to the grocery store. But I really don't have any food at my house. But then I'm going to have to go through this traffic. Instead of thinking about the positive side and being all if I go through this traffic and if I go to the store, get my food, and then I come back home, then I have food at my house. And then I can actually enjoy sitting down, having a couple of snacks, and just hanging out at my house and thinking about it in a negative way.
this up.
Okay, all right, we have 2 other questions here that I'm going to answer with the same exact answer because I have the same answer for both. So I'm going to read them both real quick. One is, what are the key habits that have transformed your life? Another one is, how do you stay focused on yourself and your goals during chaotic times? Those are 2 pretty good questions. And my exact answer for both of those is don't give a fuck. Literally just the best thing that I found is to just not give a fuck, because if you're worried about the chaotic times, then your head is going to be everywhere and you can't possibly fix it. If you're worried about what's going on, as sad as it is, what's going on in Palestine, if you're always worried about that, or you're always worried about, you know, what kind of traffic's going to be going on today, or how chaotic traffic's going to be, what if someone wrecks while I'm driving, you know, if you're always worried about the outside things, that is all chaos, really, because the world is really, really, really chaotic, then you're never going to be able to actually do things with your life, because you do not have the brain power to think about all the chaos in the world. I promise that. So quite literally your only option, I mean, the Palestine thing, like I said, it's very sad, but you cannot fix it. You're not going to fix it. So quite literally your only option is just to not care. Not worry about it. Maybe you can care, but don't worry about it, because it's not something that you can fix. Therefore, it's just taking up space in your mind for absolutely no reason. So don't worry about things that basically don't concern you. I mean, sure, it might concern you if you're driving down the road and someone's wrecked, but what are you going to do about it? So don't worry about any sort of chaotic times. Just focus on the task at hand, what you're trying to do. If someone wrecks, cool, go around them. Maybe stop, see if they're okay, but continue on. Just only think about the one thing that you're trying to get done and where you're trying to go in life, because you can't help everybody else. You can't fix all these chaotic times. You might as well not worry about them.